It allows me to really think about continuing my education and not being like, man, I hate learning. I'm just gonna stop learning. When a student feels like they belong somewhere and they feel truly at home in their school, first, they're just better off socially, which allows them to make much more fulfilling connections, which makes them happier. And it also helps them academically because they feel like school is something they want to try and not just something that their parents make them do.
All kids need to arrive here feeling safe, supported, comfortable, and like they belong, and that makes them feel well when they're here, and when they feel well when they're here, they can learn and behave and have access to their learning environment.
Some of our spaces as they currently exist are not really set up to maximize student well-being. For example, we have classrooms that don't have good HVAC, we have classrooms with poor sound systems, and we want our students to be in spaces where they're comfortable so that their brains are eager and open for learning.
Consistently, studies reaffirm that students who are involved in athletics, activities, or even performing arts have better grades, better attendance, better well-being. They feel more connected at school, even beyond high school. It gives them skills that they need to be confident in the workplace as well.
So sensory spaces and assistive technology, first of all, help all students. So yes, definitely students with disabilities, but any student could use access to a space in a building that allows them the strategies they need to calm their brains and bodies down so that they can go back to the classroom and learn. And everybody needs that. We all as adults need that, kids need that. So when those spaces are available in schools, anyone can access them. And for assistive technology, having the ability to use that to bring out your writing and your reading and your math skills, no matter what your ability level is, having access to assistive technology, whether you're above level or right where you need to be or need a little help, just helps get those thoughts out in all those areas.
So a lot of times in schools, it's really loud or just there's a lot going on. Like in a lunchroom where just talking nonstop, sometimes the intercom is way too loud. And it can just be really overwhelming. And so having a space that's more quiet, that's more calm for students who have issues with sensory overload, to just be able to go there and calm down also helps with their well-being in school.
It's important when students of all abilities and different abilities play together because they learn from each other and they learn how to be social with each other, how to help each other, how to take turns and play with people that might be different from them, which is what inclusion is all about. You should not have to go to a separate space. You should not experience barriers in playing with your friends at recess just because you might have a physical need or another kind of a need. It's just helpful to be all together and be friends and go out and play and do all the same things.
I mean, I think having accessible playgrounds is extremely important because it's all about being equitable for different students and providing what they need to be successful and to thrive. And if you don't have that, then you're not really doing it.
It could look like having a really wide ramp so that a kid with maybe a wheelchair can get up to the slide and you don't just have to use the stairs. It can be a wide slide so that a kid can go down with their parent. But whatever it is, it's that everyone can access the same space at the same time so they can be together, and it promotes equity and inclusion and belonging and empathy, and it's just really important.
On an old track, it's really hard, and so if you fall, you just scrape and you bleed. And it's the same thing for a field. But a new one, it's much more spongy, and so it's just a much more enjoyable experience.
Typically, the lifespan of a turf is 10 to 12 years. A turf has multiple layers, and so eventually those layers break down with continued use and impact, whether it's students falling on it, whether it's feet, even the equipment that we sometimes put on there with soccer goals and different components for football practice. There is a layer on each turf that we do significant testing on to make sure it's safe enough for if a student falls, it can withhold some of that impact. And so renewing the turf allows us to make sure that we have a healthier layer for protection for our students. When we think about playable time, that's really the biggest factor in adding lighting at tracks. Our teams will use fields from 3 to 5 and sometimes even 6. And once it gets dark, that limits community access. When we add field lighting, that now adds 3 or 4 more hours to the time that can be played on that field. And so that opens up to our community youth groups and then even some of our adult groups and others that access our facilities.
I think that with overcrowding and how it impacts our students and our teachers is that it makes it that much harder to spend that individual time with a student and be able to pick up on any challenges they might be facing or anything that they need to be talking about, especially as they get older. It's just much harder to build the relationships, and one of the things we know is that the child relationship with the adults in the building is a very high protective factor for their mental well-being, so they need to have access to adults. It's much harder to do if there's too many kids in the classroom and not enough adults around to meet their needs. We don't get into this line of work because we don't want to make connections with children and their families. So when there's a barrier to that because there's just too many kids in the room, it really impacts, I think, a teacher's well-being as well and their experience of teaching and wanting to be here and be with the kids.